Please join me in a very warm Century 21 welcome for Rick DeLuca.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. I sit here and there's about probably 1,500 people in this room, and I found myself just kind of flashing back here as Bill was sharing a couple things with you on what, here I am standing in front of over 1,000 people here to share some ideas on maybe it'll help you become a little more proficient and efficient in your real estate career. And I can't help but think back to when I began my career, not all that long ago. I mean, in 1975, when I got my license in Reno, Nevada, I was a part-time agent. Anybody else start part-time in here, by the way? Did you? All right, so you know what I'm talking about, 35, 40 hours a week part-time? And see, I was a policeman. I was a cop for 6.5 years in Reno, and got my real estate license part-time, and so for 1 year as a part-time agent, I was chasing crooks at nighttime and chasing buyers and sellers in the daytime, and sometimes that's right, cross paths, all right. And at the end of 1 year as a part-time agent, at the end of my first year, I'd made $1,100, not a month, that's what I made, all right, for the first year part-time. Really glad they hired me now, right, to come here and talk to you. And so based on my financial success, I jumped in the business full-time at the end of that part-time year. But hit the market at a good time in the late 70s, and we all made money in the late 70s in the business for the most part, and kind of took off running. And I will tell you that I've been up and down. I think it'll be very evident to most of you ever heard me before. There's no reason you should have. I just sold a lot of houses in Reno, Nevada, my marketplace, couple 100,000 people. For 6 consecutive years, I sold over 200 homes a year. In my biggest year in the business, I sold 292 houses. And I've had as many as 5 full-time personal assistants. I've made a lot of mistakes. And I like to share some of the things that I did wrong and some of the things that seemed to work well. The thing I'm most proud of my entire career is not my own personal production, however. It's the systems that I created. And anyone who's ever been in a seminar that I've conducted will tell you that if there's one trademark I have, it's that I have a system for everything. I have a checklist mentality. And the one thing I'm most proud of is that I had 153 agents in my company when I sold it. They used the same systems that I developed in my career, and we are an independent company in Reno. 80% of the people I hired were new licensees, and when I sold my company 4.5 years ago, our little independent company with 153 people led the nation in production. We averaged 48.6 closings per agent per year. And so I am used to working in an atmosphere that is very, very serious. People are basically worked in our company. They worked in our company for one basic reason, that's the what? Make money. And I know that's why you're here too, and I take that seriously. I move at a very fast pace. I will tell you, I'm just going to throw lots of things on the screen. I want to share as many systems with you as I can in the short time we've got together. I would hope that in less than 90 minutes, because we got started a little bit late, but I will finish at the allotted time that they told me to at 4:30. That I would hope everyone in here can get maybe 3 or 4 or 5 ideas in an hour and 15 minutes to make it worth your while coming. So one of the things, even though it's a bit basic, I will tell you is that the first thing I'm going to throw on the screen is that I have sat next to some tremendous superstars in this industry. Since 1978, I've sat on superstar panels at realtor conventions, and I've had people around me sell a lot more homes than I have. And my personal observation is that the single biggest difference between the superstars, the people that are just the absolute peak of this industry, and real good producers, the single biggest difference is one thing and one thing only, and that is they have more consistency. The superstars do everything with more consistency. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start throwing out ideas to you, and it is pretty much based on the one philosophy of being consistent in everything. And I just want to give you lots and lots of ideas. Example, again, a very small idea. I would hope that all of you, because I have people in this room that have been in the business for a long time and people that are fairly new in the business. And I want to try to address both groups of people and everyone in between as well. One of the things I think that we have got to get into a habit of as quickly as possible, as basic it may sound to you, is that I think on a daily basis, on a 5-day-a-week basis, we have got to have small, reachable goals that we set every single day. That became a critical component of my success. That I don't care whether you're going to make 10 phone calls a day, or you're going to write 5 notes, or you're going to meet 2 people a day. I don't care what goes on the list. I don't think that's terribly important, but I think that you should get into the habit of setting small, reachable goals every single day. Whatever kind kinds of activities you're comfortable with. And again, you don't need to write mine down. And I will tell you right up front, as you see, I don't put things on the screen for a long, long time. I put up there not for you to copy everything on the screen, because that will be physically impossible. My purpose is to throw enough things up there that you'll find 3, 4, 5, 6 things that make sense and get the gist of it and write that down. All right, not every single thing. So let me just preface that. One of the things that concerns me as I travel North America for the last 3 years that I've been doing this now, is that there's a tremendous amount of time and energy and money wasted by the real estate industry, by people that are well-intentioned. One of the sad things about our industry is that you don't become more successful simply because you work hard. Would you agree with that, by the way? That is not what this business is all about, which is a real shame, because it's kind of the American way, if you will, that we're going to work hard and make it. That doesn't work. We've got too many people in our business not working very smart. And so with that in mind, I think that before, even though there are proven successful people in this room, there's always room for improvement. And so with that in mind, I think you need to know where business comes from before you begin chasing it. I see too many people wasting a tremendous amount of their time and energy and money chasing business in areas that have a very low return. And so from statistical information from the National Association of Realtors Economics and Research Division, we can see, I'm going to use this as kind of a foundation on the first system that I'm going to really share with you. This is where business comes from. 31% from acquaintances, 20 from referrals, and 19 from past clients. Well, the first 3, this is not a lightning bolt idea. I mean, most of us know this because we've been in the business for a number of years. But the first 3 things generate over 2/3 of our business. True or false? That's where business comes from. Now let me clarify for you the next one. Agent contact, 12%. What is agent contact? Agent contact is for sale owners, expired listings, geographic farming, and cold calling combined. Generates 12%. Whether some of us like to admit or not, those methods of generating business is declining. All right, and there's all kinds of reasons. We don't have enough time to go into that. But it's not a big part of our business. The bottom half is all advertising. It's all advertising. I am not here to squelch advertising. I'm not here to even imply that I did not advertise, because I did advertise. But what I learned years ago was that I'm going to spend my advertising money and energies in proportion to where the business comes from. In other words, I think that more of us in this room would be more productive and more efficient if we worked the top part of the list rather than putting the emphasis on the bottom part. Are you with me on that? It's a very simple premise. And yet we are, as an industry, I'd ask you, as we sit here this afternoon, where are you spending your time and energy and money as you look at the list? Where are you personally spending your time and energy and money? Based on a survey done 2.5 years ago by a guy named Dick Wilson of the real estate industry, he determined that 85% of our expenses in the bottom 4. Is that fair to say, by the way? We spend a tremendous amount of money in the bottom part of the list, yet the business is coming from the top part. From the top part. And I'd like to share very quickly some ideas on how you may be able to work the top part a little more efficiently. Some of you can relate to this, I know. Regardless of how long you've been in the business, you can remember when you first started. One of the things I told you, I was a policeman when I came into the real estate industry. There were 300 people in my sphere of influence, my very first sphere of influence, the very first tape I ever listened to, said write down the names and addresses of every person you know. And I had 308 names and addresses on my sheets of paper. 300 of them were Reno policemen, all right, that I'd worked with, and the other 8 were cocktail waitresses, all right? And when I went in the real estate business, those 308 people I knew for a fact were all going to give me their business, and they're going to tell all their friends to use me. Yes or no? Have you been there? Only to find out, in reality, that's not the way it works in this business. I think the secret to long-term high production is one thing and one thing only, and that's nothing more than the more confidence people have in you, the more prone they are to recommend you. That's what this business is founded on, and it's no more complex than that. I think that there are different considerations on why people will recommend us, which is the key to this business. I think they think about things like whether you're a nice person, how long you've been in the business, the company you're affiliated with, ongoing contact, evidence of your production, I think is the single most important one. I think they need to see evidence of your production or your success, and not the other ones. I don't think the other ones are all that important. I think being a nice person is that's fine, but the reality is there are people making a real good living in every one of your communities in the real estate business that are not very nice people. True or false? It is not a prerequisite to success. All right? And the list goes on and on and on. I think people need to see not only ongoing contact from you, I think they need to see that you're successful, because the more success you demonstrate to them, the more confidence they have in you, the more prone they are to recommend you. And I know it's kind of a fairly simple thing to say, but let me try to give you some examples of how I and perhaps some other people are doing it, and you may have your own ideas, or maybe feel free to use mine. I decided to have ongoing contact with my sphere of influence, my 308 people, and I was going to mail to them every single month, not a newsletter, but I was going to mail to them evidence of my production. Anyone who's ever been in a seminar, it probably is familiar with my direct mail program because it's the foundation of my success. And the direct mail program is very simply this. Once a month, I mailed my listing flyers and my buyer's flyers. The listing flyers, if I had 4 listings, I had 4 flyers. If I had 12 listings, I had 12 flyers that month. Once a month, I fold them up, bulk rate permit, and a computerized mail label, no envelope, nothing fancy, and I mail all my listing flyers to my entire sphere of influence every 30 days. The listing flyers look like this. It says, do you know a buyer for this home? I've just listed another property. I have a black and white picture of a house, a 6-line description, and it says at the bottom, if you know someone who may be interested, have them call me for more information. And I might have 3 of these, or 5 of these, or 10 of these, or 20 of these, however many listings I had. There's a Century 21 agent, Sydney Verdugo. There's her flyer. Do you know a buyer for this home? I've just listed another property. All right, she's been doing it for about 2 years now. I will tell you that there's an alternative for some of you who don't have a lot of listings, and that is that I would go to other agents in my company when I was newer in the business and ask them, you just took a new listing over there on Greenwood, and I wonder if I could make up a flyer of your new listing and mail it to everyone that I know. And I never had an agent in my company say, well, no, I wouldn't want that kind of exposure for my listing, all right? And I don't think you would either. And then I simply changed the I've just listed to what, folks? We've just listed. Exactly, because what people see is a picture of a house in your picture. To them, that means you are productive. I also sent out what I called my buyer's flyers. It says, do you know a home for these buyers? I'm currently showing properties to the following buyers. I had the names of the buyers I was working with, and then a description, price range, some of the amenities in the area. And at the bottom it says, if you know someone who may want to sell a home that meets the needs of one of these buyers, please call me. Some of them I had a buyer's agency with, and some of them I did not. So I sent the listing flyers and the buyer's flyers, all of them evidence of my production. When people see the buyers on there and my picture, to them that means that I am selling real estate. And take it from me, I did this program for 14 years. And that's the message that's demonstrated to people very clearly. Here's a Century 21 agent that just sent this out. You can see he sent me a note. There's his buyer's flyers. And if you can see this, he doesn't use the last names. He says Jim and Tracy, Dan and Carol. He uses first names. January 16th, he sent the note. His very first mailing, there was to 370 people the very first time he mailed it. And in the first 3 weeks after his mailing, he had 6 new listings. All right? Because what people see is evidence of your production. That to them means you are successful. Thus, they have more confidence in your ability. Thus, they're more prone to recommend you or actually use you yourself. Does this make sense, by the way? I know it's a pretty simple premise. Compare that, if you will, to a newsletter that I got in the mail about 3 weeks ago. And I won't show you the front of it. It's got his picture and his name on everything. But on the inside, when I open up the newsletter, here's what I saw. All right? Yeah, now as we can tell, there's the problem with newsletters, there are way too many words. But I suggest to you the other problem with the newsletter is this. The single biggest obstacle preventing many people's increased production in the real estate business is nothing more than what I'm about to say. And for a handful of you in this room, it will be the single most important thing you hear me say in 75 minutes that I'm with you. And that's this, that many of the people in your sphere of influence, the people who are in a position to recommend you, the single biggest obstacle they have is that many of these people continue to see you in the capacity in which they met you prior to your real estate career. Did you follow what I just said? And that goes for people who've been in the business 3, 4, and 5 years, folks, not just for the first year or two. And so what I try to demonstrate in less than 10 minutes is that I think it's imperative that we give people evidence of our production and our success so we begin to change their perception of our success level. Are you with me on that? And however you do it is for you to decide. I simply gave you my way of doing it. And what I did with the agents in our company, we mailed, in a community of 240,000 people, we mailed to 88,000 people a month, our 153 agents, and dominated our market area because we mailed to our individual spheres of influence. Here's the fellow who, fairly recent, as you can see, here's a letter from Bob McLaughlin, a Century 21 agent, one of your peers, February 2nd, 94. He said, I want to let you know that I've started to use your sphere mailing program about 2 months ago. The response has been much better than I expected. On my first buyer flyer, I received 2 calls, one from a person I added to my sphere list from 20 years ago, and another from someone I didn't even know, but the flyer had been passed on. On the mailer for the home for sale, 2 more calls came in, resulting in showing a home was one of them. It goes on to say, I'm a 20-year-plus veteran in the real estate business, and this soft sell approach is me. My response from my sphere has been so positive. I appear to be putting forth so much effort in marketing. I've received some comments such as, I can see you're sure doing well. These comments add credibility to my career, on and on and on. Does it make sense to you? Somehow demonstrate to people your ongoing increased production, and you'll begin to change people's impression of your success level. By the way, frequently people ask me, can you use the same idea in a geographic farming? I don't know. I never geographically farmed. I question the value if you just picked a group of addresses and started mailing these kinds of things. If you're already entrenched in a geographic farm, then you may very well want to add evidence of your production to the people that you're mailing to in your geographic area. Here's a Century 21 agent that he was in a seminar, you can see, September 16th. He said, Dear Rick, just want to say thanks again. Your ideas and strategies and systems have paid off big. For your information, I do use a lot of your ideas in my geographic farm and with FSBOs. Your message built the confidence of prospective clients. I took this and ran. I'm killing them in my geographic farm area with these flyers and with FSBOs. Now you can't say don't mail to geographic farms. Well, I guess you can say whatever you want to, he said. Which is true. It's my seminar, so... I started mailing to 308 people, and I finished my career mailing to a little over 3,000 people. And I went from once a month to twice a month. So I mailed to 3,000 people every 2 weeks. And you don't have to be a mental giant to figure out that by mailing to 3,000 people every 2 weeks, I probably was mailing more than some other people were. And I think that there's some consistency in it. I think it works. I continually added people to my list. Every person I met, almost every person I met, waitress, tellers at banks, everybody, I tried to get onto my sphere of influence. I'm into systems. I have a checklist for everything, including a teller at the bank or the waiter at the restaurant. Here's how I add people to my sphere. I compliment the person. I simply, you did a great job today. You're really good at what you do. I think that, you know what? As a matter of fact, I know we're really sensitive to time, but I'm going to take 10 seconds to say this. I'm going to turn this off. My observation of North America in the last 3.5 years traveling our countries, Canada and the United States, is this. I think our society is in desperate need of more compliments, period. Would you agree with me on that? All right? And maybe we can do our share. Maybe we can do our share. Now, back to adding people on the list. After I compliment them, I tell them, I try to create a real estate conversation by saying, as a matter of fact, you'd probably be really good at what I do for a living. Or I hope I do as good a job for my buyers and sellers as you did for me today. Somehow I'm going to bring up the fact that I'm in the real estate business because 7 out of 10 times when I do, they say something about the local market. Does the same thing happen in your market area, by the way? And when they do, when they say, well, how is the market? What are interest rates doing in the market area? Is the market any better? That's when as basic as may appear to some of you, that's when I always insert some type of real estate statistic or two. Some type of real estate statistic or two. Because I found that when I can cite with some specificity a couple of real estate statistics about the marketplace, it gives me instant what? Credibility. Instant credibility. And most people don't have a clue. I then tell them I have a special list of people that I mail real estate information on, all the buyers and sellers I'm working with, and if they'd like to be on the list, I'd be happy to include them. And number 5, I send them a handwritten personal note within 24 hours. Thanks again for the great service today. Enjoyed meeting you. I look forward to sending the information I promised you. I send 10 handwritten notes a day, 5 days a week. 10 notes a day, 5 days a week. I have a system for notes. They're 3 to 5 lines long, short to the point. Use a broad tip pen. Don't use a fine point pen. Psychology Today magazine, 1979, said a broad tip pen takes up more space, has more positive impact to the reader, and it also takes up more space than a note card. All right. Number 3, a unique close. Number 4, date and time in the upper right-hand corner. Number 5, a minimum number every day. And for many of us in this room, if we committed to sending 1 handwritten note a day, 5 days a week, it would be an increase over what we're currently doing. True or false? Then start with 1 handwritten note a day. You know what? I'm going to give you a whole different idea here. Before I do, I want to share something with you. I thought about this morning a little bit. I flew in here this morning. I'm in Hawaii on my vacation right now. So I got here at 10 o'clock this morning from Maui, and I have a 6 o'clock flight back out tonight, going back. And I was thinking about, geez, I'm going to stand in front of a couple thousand people, and you're going to talk some, tell them some ideas, and it's one of the biggest crowds I've ever stood in front of. It just kind of amazes me to look back on my career because I did a lot of things not very, very well at the beginning, and it just kind of amazed me that people come and listen to me. I flew 3,000 miles, I'll tell you that. I just been thinking about it all night long, and I thought about, to demonstrate, I thought about it, well, I'll just tell you, 14 months into the real estate business, I got a call from a guy, and I had done fairly well my first year, but a year and 2 months into the business, I got a call from a guy on a Friday night. His name was Henry Edwards. Mr. Edwards said, "You've been recommended to us. We want you to show us some condominiums. Are you available on Saturday morning?" And I said, "Yes, I am." So I drove over to pick him up on Saturday morning. And by the way, there's a separate message for some of you in there. When I drove over to pick him up, my first year in real estate, I sold 42 houses. You know what I drove my first year? I drove a Chevy van. Okay, and I don't mean the kind of van with, the fax machine and microwave and all that stuff. My van had 2 seats in it and a shell. You know how I thought you showed homes to buyers? I thought you took their car. Because for the first 14 months, I said, "Do you want to take your car at my van?" I always said, "Let's take it." To pick up Mr. and Mrs. Edwards in my van, knocked on the door, a guy came out, real distinguished gentleman in his early 60s, introduced himself as Henry Edwards, introduced me to his wife. Her nickname is Bal Edwards, B-A-L. Some of you have been to, or maybe you're familiar with Miami, Florida area, in a shopping area marina called Bal Harbor. That's her. Wealthiest people I've ever known in my lifetime. They came out of the motel, and there was one other car in a parking space in front of the motel, and it was a maroon Rolls Royce. And he said, "Do you want to take your car or ours?" And I said, "Which one's yours?" And he said, "The Rolls." And I said, "Let's take yours." Now you got to picture this. I'm 27 years old. I'm in the back seat of a Rolls Royce. They're showing me condos. All right. I roll down both back windows so everyone I know in Reno will see me. Okay. And I know none of you have ever done this. I'm computing my commission in my head on the way to the show. All right. We look at all 3 condos. We finish. We come back to the motel, and Mr. Edwards says this to me. He says, "I don't like any of them." I said, "Oh no." Turns to Val and he goes, "Which one do you like?" She goes, "I don't like any of them either." He said, "Well, if you had to buy one, which one would you buy?" She goes, "Well, if I guess we had to buy one, I'd buy the last one." And he turned back to me and he said, "Okay, write it up." I'll never, ever forget. It was $72,500 was the list price on it, free and clear. And he said, "Write it up, $70,000 cash." And I said, "I'm a little puzzled here." I said, "We don't really like it. Why are we making this pretty good offer on this thing?" And he said, "Well, we live in California. You're in Nevada. We need a legal address in Nevada for tax reasons." Now, don't write this idea down, all right? Because my response to Mr. Edwards was, "Well, wouldn't it be cheaper if you got a post office box?" So he overcame my objection, all right? And yeah, now you know why you hired me. Pay me the big bucks to come here and talk to you guys. I saw my first cash sale. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, all right? He had to help me write it out. And I asked him why he called me and said, "You'd been recommended." I said, "Who recommended me?" And he said, "You were recommended by Betty." Betty. No, it wasn't one of the cocktail waitresses, no. Betty, I don't know who Betty is. He goes, Betty, the waitress at Sambo's restaurant." Oh, man. Where did I go the next day for lunch? Sambo's. There I am, boy. I'm sitting at Betty's station. A lady comes over, takes my order, and turns around, walks away. She comes back with my lunch a few minutes later. And I said, "Are you the only Betty in here?" She goes, "Well, yeah, I am." And I said, "I don't understand. A guy called me 2 days ago. His name was Henry Edwards." She goes, "I don't know who that is." He says, "Well, you said some wonderful things about me." She goes, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Rick DeLuca." And she went, "Oh, God." She says, "I'm humiliated. I'm so embarrassed I don't recognize you." I said, "That's okay, Betty. I don't recognize you either." I said, "I am curious, though. Why did you tell this guy to call me?" She says, "Well, he was sitting at the counter with the real estate section open in the newspaper. I said, 'You looking for a home?' And he said, 'Yeah, looking for a condo.' And I took out your business card from my wallet, and I said, 'My Lord, I mean, how'd you get my card? Why did you even remember to do that?' She goes, 'Well, you probably don't remember this,' she said, 'but about a year ago, you were in here for lunch.' As best as I can determine, I'd been in the real estate business around 60 days. And she said, 'You were in here one day. I was really busy for lunch. Before you left that day, you told me what a great job I had done as your waitress.' She goes, 'I've been a waitress 15 years. She says, 'Do you know how often customers tell me what a great job I do?' Not terribly often. She goes, 'As a matter of fact, you told me I'd be really good in the real estate business.' So sometimes you got to stretch it a little bit, all right? And then she said, I was so impressed with how much you knew about the local real estate market. 60 days I'd been in the business. But I knew a handful of what? Statistics. Instant credibility. And she goes, but what impressed me the most was a couple days later, after you're in here, I got a what from you? A handwritten note. She said, in 15 years as a waitress, do you know how many notes I received from customers? 1. And then she said, every month, I get this stuff from you in the mail. And she said, what I've heard 100 times in my career, she said, based on the stuff in the mail, she said, you must be selling every home in Reno. Can you see where someone's perception of your production is greater than reality? And so she said, with that, when I saw the man sitting there, it seemed to me it was the least that I could do to tell him to call you. Does that sound realistic, by the way? 2 years later, Mr. Edwards decided to buy something other than a condominium. And I made my only commercial sale. I don't know anything about commercial real estate. I sold homes and lots of them. I know nothing about commercial. I made one commercial sale to Mr. Henry Edwards at the end of my third year in real estate when I sold him Park Lane Mall for $7.2 million. The reason I tell you that is that who was responsible for that sale, by the way? Betty was, right? Betty was. And the reason I tell you that is very simply this. Every person in this room, and there's almost a couple thousand of us in this room right now, every single one of us engaged in residential resale real estate, I think we all meet Betty's almost every day. Yes or no? Would you agree to that? And the only difference between me and a lot of other real estate people is I had a what to plug Betty into, a system to plug her into. And I see so many people make this job much more difficult than it needs to be because they don't have a system of anything. I also mailed out postcards every month. Now, that's not a new idea, but my postcards were a little different. I didn't like the clever little pictures, didn't like recipes, didn't like quotes, didn't like cartoons. I wanted to send things out that generated business and continued to enhance my image in people's eyes and change their perception of my success. And I'm very practical. Probably the most common thing said to, in my seminars is that they're most down-to-earth practical ideas I've heard in a long time. And I will tell you, with that down-earth style, I will tell you, here's my marketplace begins moving in January, February, March. That's when the listings come on the marketplace, dies a little bit in the summer, takes off in the fall, dies again in the dead of winter. So I kind of correspond with the marketplace. In January, if you will, I send out a postcard, which is pretty much straight to the point, and it says, I'm now taking listings. Do you know someone who wants to sell? How complex is that? But I challenge some of you in this room to experiment. Why don't you send a flyer or a postcard at the right time in your marketplace when the listings are coming on the market and tell them you're now taking listings, you're looking for listings. In February I sent out, I need homes to show buyers. Have you thought of selling or know someone who has? The same message. I'm not going to give you all 12 postcards, but I'll give you a feel. In the spring I began shifting gears. I enjoy working with buyers. Do you know of any? So I show them, that I'm working both sides of the coin. And I wish I could convey with the sincerity that I feel in my heart to get people to try something as simplistic as this because it just flat works. It just works. We make this business more complex than it needs to be. And then I'll show you one more. I sent this one about halfway through the year, and it said, your 3 most important considerations in selecting a real estate expert. Maintaining contact, history of success, always looking for business. I ask you this question, am I doing all 3 based on what you've seen just in the first 20 minutes? Yes. I am maintaining contact. I'm clearly asking for their business, and I am showing them evidence of my production and my success based on the flyers that I showed you. The postcards, I think postcards, if you're going to do any kind of postcard campaign, I think they should be quality because the postcard is you. Yes or no? It is you. This is your image. And so mine was a glossy stock. It's a 2-color postcard. I wanted to say the right thing by its appearance, not just the words. You should be spending, I know many of you heard this before, you should be spending 10% of your gross income on self-promotion. If you're not spending 10% of your own personal income to promote yourself, you're making the job more difficult than it needs to be. Now, for the few of you in this room that are fairly new in the business, one of the problems I've caused for you is 10% of what? And I'm going to tell you that you have to have some kind of an annual figure in mind that you need to make even in the first 12 months, and you need to start spending 10% of that in advance. I do think one of the things that's changed in the last decade in this industry is that for the most part, you cannot make it in this industry without spending money first. Would you agree with me on that? That has changed in this industry, folks, just in the last 10 years. But I think not just to spend money is the answer. I think you need to spend the money when the market's moving back off when your market goes down. As I said, my market went up early in the year, kind of died off a little in summertime, went back up, and then died off in the dead of winter. So this is my annual budget for self-promotion. And as you can see, and this is how I train my agents, to spend their money when the market moved. As you can see that I spent 40% of my annual budget in the first 100 days of the year, because I wanted to position myself in the marketplace as it began making its move. And I see a lot of real estate people waste a tremendous amount of money because they spent it at the wrong time. The next dilemma for me was when I became productive is that my income went up and down because it seems like when I put some sales together, then I used all my energy trying to keep them together, get them to the closing table, and then I turned around and looked, I had nothing else going. Anybody been there, by the way? And so I found that I needed to develop another systematic approach so that I could have a constant income stream, if you will. And so I created what I called market blasting. Market blasting when 18 weeks in advance, I I identified what I was going to do. I designed either the direct mail piece and or the advertising piece for the next 4.5 months. And whether I remember to do them or not, they fell into place. Are you with me on that? They simply fell into place because they're already done. The first thing, as basic as it may sound to you, is in the first week of that year, I sent out a thank you letter to my entire sphere of influence, thanking them for their encouragement and their support for the previous calendar year. If you're not doing that, you're making a fundamental error. I know it's very basic for some of you, but many of you in this room are not doing it. Market blasting, I'm not going to walk it through because we don't have the time for it, but this is what I mean by market blasting. There are 18 weeks up here of activities. Here's my direct mail program, week 4, Do You Know Flyers. It's also in week 8, week 12, week 16. This month's listings and sales. This was an ad that I ran, and it said this month's listings and sales, and I had a picture of the house, the address, and the price of my listings and sales, and I make no distinction between listings and sales because I want people to see whatever they want to see. That went out in week 5, week 9, week 13, week 17. There are not 18 different activities. There are 18 weeks of activities. Do you understand what I just said? Several of them are repeated. But it kept me on track. It gave me some focus. It created a tremendous amount of success for me. Week 14, I had my buyer's flyer. I had a tremendous impact with the buyer's flyer. I ran an ad in the newspaper, and I changed the one that said, you know, home for these buyers. I'm currently showing homes to the following buyers. I made one change to it in my flyer, and I increased my cost a little bit, but I increased the impact tremendously. The one change I put into my buyer's flyer when I ran it as an ad, I put the pictures of the buyers I was working with. I got a release form signed by about 85% of them would sign a release form for me, gave me a photograph, and by having people's pictures in here, one major thing that happened is that I humanized what I did for a living. Does that mean anything to any of you? I humanize what I do for a living. These are real people that I'm working with. And I'll tell you what, this is a powerful listing tool. People called and said, hey, we got a home that sounds like what these Harlech people are looking for, and I think maybe you should come out and look at our house. And so it generated listing leads. It also generated buyer leads, and it created, and please hear this one, it created a tremendous amount of buyer loyalty. Every time I had a closing, settlement, whatever part, whatever your terminology is, every time I had a closing, if it was a listing of mine, I ran a different ad. It said another satisfied seller, and I had a picture of the seller. If it was a buyer I had sold the property to, it said another satisfied buyer, and a picture of the buyer. And about 90% of the people gave me a photograph and signed a release form. If it was an out-of-state buyer, someone coming from a different market area, it didn't say another satisfied buyer, it says another out-of-state buyer, and I have the state they moved here from, and then a one-line testimonial from them. Over a period of a few months, what began to happen is I had more and more people begin to call me and say, we understand that you are an expert in dealing with people who are moving into the area. Can you see that happening, by the way? It generated a tremendous amount of referral business for me. Now, let me stop for just a second. In the first, little while we've had going here, literally everything that I've shown you on the screen has not lost sight of the main theme. The theme has remained constant throughout, and that is everything I've shown you in its own way has said evidence of my what? Production and success. The more production and success people see you have, the more confidence I have in you, the more prone they are to recommend you. That's what this business is all about. Every month, I had what I called a power meeting, where I met with 4 or 5 other agents in my market area from competing firms. We would get together for breakfast or for lunch, 4 or 5 of us, and we would sit there and just exchange ideas. What's working, what's not working. I have learned, like many of you I know, I have learned that competing agents are not, they're not to be feared. Competing agents can cause your careers to flourish. I mean, these people will help make you money. And so we met and we just exchanged all kinds of information. If nothing else, if there was no other benefit, from time to time we would exchange expired listings with each other. Because I've got a seller who doesn't want me anymore, I don't want them anymore, and I refer them to one of these 3 other people, and at least I get a what? A referral fee to recoup my hard marketing expense. And so we had a lot of benefits to each other. I think agent cooperation, I'm sure like most of you in this room, if not all of you, would agree is critical. I have a system for agent cooperation. I'll give you 2 or 3 real quick. I run an ad thanking all the agents I co-opted the deal with in the previous year. The ad would look like this. It says, thanks to these agents for helping me have a record-setting year. Each of the agents listed below cooperated with Rick in a sale during 1988, and I have the agent's name and their company name underneath, right? And that's what it looks like. I have a co-op agent gathering out of the office. Every February, I invite everybody I did a deal with to my home for a little wine and cheese kind of a thing. I send a handwritten note to every agent that I close a sale with. Let me stop for a second. I pride myself on my honesty in my programs, and with that candor in mind, I will tell you that there are some of the agents I did deals with that I did not send a note to, and I did not invite them to my house to eat my wine and cheese, all right? And I think you know what I'm talking about, don't you? I mean, some of these people, we finish a transaction. Well, you remember this list here? Some of these people, I felt like putting an asterisk next to the name and saying moron down at the bottom of the ad, all right? I, like a lot of you, tried to get better and better and better at what I did for a living, and one of the best things I ever came up with was that I called, it's what I called my, here's the system for it, my annual client customer phone questionnaire. There's a bunch of words on there. Don't worry about what the words say. I'm going to paraphrase it for you. What it simply meant is that at the beginning of each year, I picked up that form and I used it and I called every one of my buyers and every one of my sellers from the previous calendar year, and all those words boiled down to one thing, and that is I asked them, based on our one transaction we had this last year, is there any one thing I could have done differently for you? Is there any one thing I could have done a better job? And please do not be lulled by the simplicity of what you just heard. Some of you need to write that down. It'll be the toughest phone calls you ever make, but you will learn more from those phone calls than any seminar you ever go to. True or false? You will hear from the horse's mouth what you could have done differently to become more proficient in this industry. When someone, in fact, is referred to you, when you're a hairdresser or the guy who sold you a suit, when somebody tells somebody about you, two things happen in my system. The first one is an old standard, and that is that I send them a thank you note right away. Thanks for the vote of confidence. Thanks for telling the Joneses about me. I listed their home. The second one will separate you from the masses in this business, and that is I send an update note every month on the status of the person they had recommended to me originally. Every month, every 30 days, I send them a note, still working with the Joneses, still have their home for sale, still trying to sell their house, still trying to sell a house, still trying to sell a house. Sorry you recommended them to me in the first place. I have written notes for months to people. Let me ask you the question. If you wrote a note to somebody every single month, kind of giving them an update on the person they recommend you, would you be different in your market area? Clearly. Clearly. It impresses people so much. Yet the reason we don't do it is we don't have a system for it. My system is simple as I am. If I take a listing on March 22nd, then I'm going to open up my appointment book to April 22nd, May 22nd, June 22nd. I'm going to go 3 or 4 months in advance. On the 22nd day of each month, I'm going to write it down, Ron/Jones referral, and that is my trigger to send him that note. Like many top agents, and now more and more agents are having to do it because you have to compete with everybody else, you have to stay even with everyone. One of the things I heard from my sellers was that if you could have sent us information before you came out to our home, we would have had a chance to look at it before you got here. It would have made us feel a little more comfortable in a positive atmosphere, those kinds of things. And so I had a pre-listing package that I had my checklist of what goes in it, the contract and the CMA and the personal brochures and company brochures and marketing pieces and those kinds of things. And I simply checked off the things that I wanted. That went into my pre-listing package. I'll show a couple things that are a little bit different perhaps than some other pre-listing packages. One of the problems I had with some of my sellers was that when I went out to their home and they told me, I told them, here's the maximum your home's going to sell for in today's market, maybe let's just say $100,000 to use a number, and then they would tell me about the $20,000 they spent on landscaping, room additions, and swimming pools and whatnot. They want to take the $20,000 and do what with it? Add it right on top, and that's not the way it works. But have you been here? No matter how tactful I was in telling them they weren't going to get all of their $20,000 back, the atmosphere instantly changed. Yes or no? All of a sudden, I'm no longer their advocate, I'm now their adversary. An unhealthy environment. And so I put into my pre-listing material what I picked up years ago. It's what I called remodel or sell. It's got the different projects people do to their homes. It's got the estimated cost, which is irrelevant, by the way. This is the one that counts, the percentage recoverable. And as you can see down here, where's landscaping? Landscaping, 40 to 60% is what they're going to get back. Pool, add a pool, 0 to 40%. In other words, they better enjoy that sucker while it's in the ground because they're never getting their money back out for it, all right? The source of the information, the Institute of Real Estate Appraisers. All right, so I'm giving the information to them in black and white before I get there, which I think, here's what it does in a nutshell. If I don't give it to them before I arrive and I tell them the night that I'm there, they scream right to their emotional peak. Do they not? You cannot deal with people pricing homes when at their emotional peak. And by giving it to them 24 hours before my arrival, they have 24 hours to digest it a little bit and at least come off their emotional peak by the time I get out there to discuss it with them a little more intelligently. That one form itself has made me tens of thousands of dollars. When I set up my listing interviews, I asked people if they were going to interview more than one agent. Almost always people interview more than one agent nowadays. Yes or no? Almost always. And so I tell them this. Number one, I try to set the appointment to be the first agent out there. I do not want to be the last one like many of you have been trained. I want to be the first one. The reason I decided to be first is I found out the hard way that if you don't go first, sometimes you don't get to go. Yes or no? And so I want to go first, and I can show you a benefit to you, Mr. Marcel. You let me go first, use me as a standard comparison with other agents, and they'll let me go first. I also tell them this: if you're going to talk to 3 different salespeople, then why don't you ask all of us the same questions, and whoever you're most impressed with, that's probably who you want to list your home with. Does that make sense, by the way? Just ask all 3 of us the same list of questions. And so in my pre-listed material, I give them the suggested questions they may want to ask, all right? Is that not fair in your market area or what? Now, yeah, it's slanted towards me. It says, do you have, let's say, a personal assistant? May I see your resume or personal brochure? Most people don't have one. But look at number 3, how simple 3 is. What do you know about the market in my area? When someone asks me or one of my agents, what do you know about the market in my area? My answer is laced with what? Statistics. And then the average agent, when they say, what do you know about the market in my area? The average agent's response is pretty much, it's pretty good, a little better than last year. Things are good. Is that not true, by the way? Most of us don't know statistics, and that's how I use them to cripple the competition. I take all that information in my pre-listing package, and I put it into these individual plastic pages you see in this notebook here, in my pre-listing package. I take the questions I want all the sellers to ask all of us agents, and I take those list of questions and I laminate the questions. And on the back side of that page, it says satisfied sellers, and it has testimonials, names, and phone numbers of other sellers I've sold homes for. And this laminated page goes on the inside left-hand pocket of this leather notebook. I went to an upscale luggage store, and I paid $35 for a leather notebook. And I put it all in this nice leather notebook, and I had the luggage store stamp the seller's names in gold letters on the front. I had a courier service delivered to the seller's home 24 hours before the listing presentation. And I didn't have a lot of competition. And I know that a lot of people in here would question, geez, $35. Geez, what if you don't get the listing? I would offer to you that it hardly ever happens. And I think that we generate enough income to warrant a $35 expense perhaps more often than we think. Would you agree with me on that, by the way? And it just eliminates the competition. If you're looking for little ideas like that, I think that may help you. There's probably no, I have my own pricing strategies. I'm going to give you one of them, and that's something as simple as I put in black and white so people can see it, not just hear it from me. What we all know intuitively, and that is the longer a home's on the market, the less it sells for. We all know that, but the problem with real estate people, for the most part, is that we tell people things we don't what? Show them things. And so when I show them market time versus sales price, I can show them that from 0 to 4 weeks you're going to get 98.1%. And these are national statistics is what they are. Every market area certainly is unique to itself. But the longer the home is on the market, the less it's actually going to sell for. And it has a lot more impact. A lot more impact. Here's one of your peers, Glenn Bill, Century 21 at the Crossing. My second Rick seminar, Rick's listings and statistics, especially his market time versus selling price forms, have gotten me listings from my competitors even at a better price. Rick's techniques and ideas have directly attributed $15,000 personal income. That's what it's all about. Finding ways that you can do your job with less stress and less headache. Hey, all right, I saw you sitting back there. Here's how a buyer, one of the biggest problems you have? Here's one of the biggest problems we have with sellers is that they want their homes advertised more than we want to advertise them. Yes or no? And I think that I don't have a lot of time to go into that deal, but I'll tell you that I had a lot more success de-emphasizing advertising when I began showing my sellers how buyers find their homes. This is statistically from the National Association of Realtors. It shows how buyers find their home. 2/3 of all sales, buyers find their home by using other real estate salespeople. We know that, you see. The problem is we don't show our sellers that. 8% from advertising, 15% from yard signs, 13% from others. And so if you've got someone who says, I don't want a yard sign, they effectively have reduced the number of buyers potentially for their property by 15%. We've just sliced that part of the pie right out there. And again, I think it's the same message I'm beating you with, but it's a real strong one. I feel very strongly about it, and that is that I think sellers and buyers, for that matter, I think they need to see things versus just being told things. Would you agree with me on that? We have got to get out of this routine we have as an industry, just telling people things, and start showing them things. In my pre-listing package, I put when I had one part-time personal assistant, then I had her photograph and a little bio about her and her job description to give more credibility to the services that I'm going to render. When I had up to 5 different assistants, then I've got 5 different, my flyer has, basically, you get more for your money when you select Rick DeLuca. And I've got the 5 different assistants that I had, my closing coordinator, marketing assistant, my office coordinator who did all my deposits and and paid my bills and all my computer work. My selling assistant, which is the only one that was licensed, who worked with my buyers and actually showed them the homes. And then I went back out and actually wrote the contracts. And then my services coordinator, Mike, and what Mike did basically was that he put the yard signs up and took them down and ran papers around town, got my car washed, picked up my dry cleaning. All right. He was a what? He was a gopher. Yeah, I thought it sounded better to call him services coordinator, though. All right. And so that went in the pre-listing package. When I did, I'll give you one different idea for some of you. When I did I don't do it just what I would call a typical CMA. I think all real estate people basically do the same thing. I tried to know more about the neighborhood than my competition did, so I did what I called a market study. And the market study was on the area that the home was located in, the subdivision preferably, and it's got how many homes are in the subdivision, what's the age of the subdivision, is there active new construction going on, who are the builders or were the builders, what are the home styles, what's the square footage range, the recreational opportunities available in the schools from elementary through high school, and then based on a 6-month computer printout, I determined the average sales price, the average market time, how many homes are in the inventory today, who the top 3 listing agents in the community are, and then your overall impression of that entire subdivision. By the way, I use this same form for the new people that began working for me. They were assigned one neighborhood each week for 4 different weeks. They got 4 different neighborhoods in a 4-week period of time, and they did a market study form on each one of those neighborhoods for 4 different weeks, 4 different neighborhoods. At the end of 4 weeks, because they knew MLS statistics like the back of their hand, and they had done 4 different market studies, I would ask you this question: would you agree with me that my people knew in 4 weeks more statistically about the marketplace than most people know in 4 years? Yes or no? And we've taken a giant stride towards increasing their self-confidence. So those are some of the things, that I did for the listing part of it. Here's one listing idea. You have your presentation, I have mine. I'm going to give you one idea. If you're not asking this question, you're making your job more difficult than it needs to be. At the very beginning of a listing presentation, I have 6 things I do. I'm going to give one of them to you. I ask the seller, before I begin my presentation, what are your 3 most important considerations in selecting an agent to market your home? If you had to pick the 3 most important things you're looking for in an agent to actually market your home, what would they be? What are the 3 things you're looking for? Folks, please, please, please ask some variation of that question, because what you'll find is people, when they respond to your question, your listing presentation now becomes nothing more than a direct response to their answer. Did you follow what I just said there? You'll stop telling people things they don't care about, and you'll begin telling people the only things they do care about. For those experienced people in this room, when you begin asking people the 2 or 3 or 4 most important things they're looking for in an agent, you will automatically reduce your listing presentation time by 1/3, I guarantee it. You'll stop telling people things they don't care about. Like the night I sat in front of a young lady and she said to me these words, a single lady, she said, "You want 3 considerations?" I only have 2, but you're going to have real trouble with the first one. And I said, "Why?" And she said, "I want to list my home with a woman." That is a major obstacle for me, all right? Rather than waste more of her time and my time, I called the top female agent in my company. She came out, she took the listing, I got a referral fee. I saved myself not only wasted time, but I also saved myself from 2 or 3 days later, the listing would have popped up in the MLS with a competing agent, and I would have beat myself up wondering what I had done wrong. And I think there are some listings that you never even had a chance to get, and I think you deserve to know that. Would you agree with that, by the way? I think you deserve to know it going into it. When I take a listing, I'm not going to go into a big marketing thing, but there are 22 things I do to sell a house. From putting in MLS and put it on tours for agents and office agents and co-op agents and flyers and printed and design and brochures and open houses. And there's no magic to what's on the list, but because I had it in a checklist, I found that most agents didn't. Everything to me is, and I know some people get real tired of hearing, systems and checklists and everything else, but everything to me is a checklist. I found that the more checklists you have, the more systems you have in place, the more efficient you become. The more thoroughly you get the job done. I just flew. When did I leave Hawaii? I left Hawaii at 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. All right, got here at 10 o'clock this morning, and on these flights, and one of the guys on I just told Val this. One of the United pilot, it was his next to last leg. Tomorrow he flies from Chicago back to LA, and he retires after 30 years. And so when I got off the plane, I looked in the cabin. There he was, his white hair. This guy's been there a long time, boy, starting that thing up. And it gives me some degree of comfort to know every time before he fires that baby up, he gets out the what? The checklist. Every single time. And I don't understand why we as industry don't have the same mentality. Why don't we do the same thing? A few weeks ago, I was on a very short flight in the Midwest. Actually, it's several weeks ago now I think about it. It was late last fall. And I ran up to the counter to get on the flight, and they said that the flight had been canceled. Oh, no. They send me, actually I heard across the hall, another carrier flight to Indianapolis had been canceled. And then the guy at the gate said, all right, here's what you do. Run down to this other airline. They're flying to Indianapolis, and you guys, if you're here, you can get on the flight. So 30 or 40 of us are racing down this terminal and get there, and we get on the plane. We're all sitting there all happy we made it. The pilot of this airplane comes on the air, and here's what he says. Now, you can't make this stuff up, all right? He says to us, you probably heard there's been a number of flights canceled to Indianapolis today. I just want to let you know what's going on. The problem in Indianapolis is that there are tornadoes in Indianapolis. And so he says, but they're gone now, so you don't have to be concerned about that. But the problem wasn't the tornadoes. The problem was the torrential downpour that accompanied the tornado. It's so much rain, it washed out the ceiling of the air traffic control tower. So there was no air traffic control. So now we're sitting on a plane looking at each other like, this doesn't bother me. He says, we're going to fly visual. It's only a 54-minute flight. We're going to fly visual from here to Indianapolis, and so off we take. What he failed to tell us is that for 45 of the 54 minutes, we were in the clouds. And for 45 minutes, you got 103 people on this plane looking out the window for other airplanes going the other direction, all right? Checklists. I mean, I'll show you this just for the simplicity. I mean, I even have a checklist for something as simple as an open house. If you're going to have an open house, why don't you do it the right way? All right, and so on Monday, I write the copy for the ad. I submit the copy to the ad on Monday. I mail the seller preparation form. Well, what's that? The seller preparation form is nothing more than a standard form letter that goes to the seller. You know what all those words say? It says two things. It says, please clean up your home for this upcoming open house and leave, is what it says, all right? I'm not the only person that's been in this room that set an open house with a seller home for 3 hours. Is that a thrill or what, huh? Man, it's kind of coming back to me why I got out of the business all of a sudden here. I mail invitations to the surrounding neighborhood and all kinds of things. I arrive 50 minutes early, prepared. See the checklist. I even have a checklist what to do when I get there. All right? The standard things: turn on the lights and open the windows and turn on some music and put the toilet lids down and everything else. I got a checklist for all of it. I know I got a lot of checklists here, but as a matter of fact, here, let me find it real fast. A guy sent me this here a few weeks ago. He said, I was in your seminar, you really like checklists. This guy likes checklists too. I don't think I'm quite this bad. This guy wakes up in the morning and here's his checklist on the wall. It says, first pants, then your shoes. So, the complaint from sellers about us is that we don't have enough frequent contact with them during the listing period. Is that not fair to say, by the way? Biggest complaint they have about us. And so I have my system for that is that every 2 weeks I fill out a seller's activity report, reporting period from blank to blank. Mine's 2 weeks. And then during this period, our records indicate your property received X number of inquiries, X number of showings. That's based on floor time logs. And then on the bottom it says new listings on the market this period, new sales this period. I think it's critical that sellers get this information of new listings and new sales in their market area on a every other week basis. I think that most real estate people wait 2 or 3 months before they get it to them, and I don't think it's frequent enough. Would you agree with me on that, by the way? I think they need to have that information. One of the biggest anxieties for all of us who have listings is other agents show our listings, and then for the next 2 or 3 days we play phone tag trying to find out what their buyer said about the listing so we can tell our seller. And so I created a system to solicit the input from showing agents of my listings. They're big 5x7 postcards that sit in the listing, all my listings in a plastic tray, and I have my fax number on them. They also have a pre-postage paid self-addressed back of it, like a postcard. They can mail it to me. I asked the showing agents to tell me what you think. As it says, I'd like your opinion of this home, so I'm better informed my seller. Rate the home from 1 to 10, major strengths of the home, your opinion of the ultimate sales price. Now, why would 85% of the showing agents in my community fill this thing out and send it in to me? Not because they want to help me, because the bottom says when the property is sold, a $100 dinner will be awarded to the agent who estimates closest to the actual sales price. That's why they fill the card out and mail it back to me. And I'll tell you what, it's the best $100 I ever spent because I didn't spend the $100 unless the home what? Sold. Unless it's sold. Buyers. I'll give you just 2 quick ideas on buyers. Number 1, buyers. Well, I rank buyers as the number 1 reason real estate agents die. All right, that's. And the reason why is because we're not working with buyers, we're working with lookers. The very first time I talked to a buyer over the telephone or face-to-face, some of you may think this is a little bit on the tough side, but I asked them one question and I put them into a category based on the response to this one question. And again, I'm very simplistic in my approach to the business. The question I ask people is this: Why do you need to buy a home? Why do you need to buy a home? I don't care if they're good friends of mine or total strangers. Based on their answer, I put them into a category. They are a number one buyer if they have a date to move. A number one buyer takes priority over almost everything. Yes or no? They become the single most important thing we've got going for us. A number two buyer needs to move but has no date. They need to move but they have no date. Typical example, the seller. We list their home, they got to buy another house, but we don't have a date yet, so they're a good solid buyer, but not all that great. And I see a lot of people writing this down, so I'm going to give you what to write down for number three. There's only one other category, number three. Write down everyone else. Everyone else, because these are the people that tell us, they say things like, well, if we could find this kind of a home in this area for this price, we'd buy it. Well, if we could find that home and that price for that, an area, we'd buy it. Yes or no? All right? These people are not the people we should be working with. And so I rate those people. I then encourage, and here's where your top producers begin to differ from most of the industry, I encourage my buyers to go out and drive around and look on their own. I do not haul people around, just blindly showing them homes. I let them drive to the neighborhood. I give them a list of addresses. I give them a map and tell them if they're not familiar with the area. And I increase my buyer loyalty by a number of things. One of them, I give them a buyer's package. My buyer's package, I got a title page on it, makes them feel important, makes them feel special. I've got the home buying process, which talks about everything from selecting the homes, to viewing the homes, the contract we use, clear on through the closing and the possession. This, if they're a first-time buyer, might take a half an hour, just that one page. Other people, it takes 1 or 2 minutes. I've got the itinerary in there. Here's the homes that we may look at tomorrow, and I just list them on there so they can see the homes that we've actually got scheduled. If they're not from my market area, I give them a map of the Reno-Sparks area, and I put, here's the dots of the 4 homes we're going to look at tomorrow. Here's your new place of employment. Here's where your kids may go to school, so they become more oriented. And then this one, as basic as it may appear, has made me probably an extra $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year in potential lost income, because it reminds me to say what we all know we should say, and that is whether you find a home by seeing an ad in the paper, driving by a for sale sign, visiting open house, hearing about a home for sale, I can sell any of them to you. And I'm not the only person in this room that forgot to say that occasionally. Every once in a while we forget to say it to our buyer, only to have that buyer call us on Sunday evening all excited because they what? Just bought a house. Oh, you've been there, haven't you? And you have to muster up every ounce of courage you've ever had in your adult lifetime to tell them how thrilled you are. Because what counts to you is that they found a home they like, not necessarily you're the one that sold it to them, all right? Right. Don't lose those people. Systems. Here's a system for planning your year. Here we are, we're almost through March, and a lot of us have yet to plan 1994. The last few ideas I have for you are maybe going to be a little bit how to have a little more fun, how to be a little more creative, how to make a little more money in this business, and they begin with something as simple as planning. First of all, you need to get your hands on a horizontal year calendar. Some kind of a calendar that has, that's what they look like. Little tiny boxes for every day of the year. It's just an accordion page that folds out of your appointment book, and it's got the entire year so that you can look at it. All right, a year at a glance. And the first thing I'm going to offer that you do is that you highlight, with a yellow highlighter, you highlight your personal time, your time off, your kids' birthdays, your wedding anniversaries, Easter break, those kinds of things. I have found the hard way in this business. After 7 years, I told you I made a lot of mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes I ever made is for the first 7 years, well, let me just say it this way. I know a lot of you can identify with this. My motivation to succeed was based on fear. Fear and fear alone. After 6.5 years as a young policeman going into the real estate business, I built up this vast income source of retirement after 6.5 years that allowed me to live with no income for 11 weeks when I began my real estate career. And I had to have a commission check within 11 weeks. Anybody know what I'm talking about there? And I didn't have time to be dinking around. I needed to get a commission check. And so the mistake that I made, that I was so scared to death I was going to fail, is that all I did for my first 7 years was work. I worked 7 days a week, then I worked 14 hours a day, and I did all these things. And after 7 years, I had the Ferrari, had the $500,000 house on the private lake overlooking Reno, and had the Mercedes, and had all the plaques on the wall. I had all those things, but I didn't, I had all those, I guess I had those, a lot of what I thought were really important things at the time, but I didn't have anybody, all right? Well, every once in a while, crying out loud, I had a Ferrari, But it took me 7 years to learn what a lot of you learned earlier, and I take 60 seconds to tell you because there are a few people in this room that have yet to learn. Is it okay if I share that message, by the way? There is more to this profession than just plaques on the walls and fancy cars and big houses. I'm into making money and always have been, but you got to get some balance. And the reason I say something as basic as getting your hands on a calendar and putting some yellow highlighted boxes on it is that I have found in this business that conflicts don't just happen. We create conflicts. Yes or no? We create them. Because 95% of the time, if we had a yellow box and we say, oh, geez, I can't do it, I can't do it on Thursday, can we do it on Wednesday or Friday? 95% of the time they say what? Sure. And I would just wish we as an industry could do more and more of that. I put other things on my calendars, real basic kinds of things. My deadline for direct mail, my seasonal mailings, my sphere of influence, my methods of contact. There are only two ways to prevent burnout in this business that I've discovered. One of them is to schedule more personal time, and the other one is to do the same job a different way each year. You've got to do something a little bit different every year, otherwise you're going to burn out of this business. And so with that in mind, here's some things that I put on my calendar. How old and basic is this idea? An annual client gathering, right? The annual client party. The only difference was I did it, that's all. I did it at the end of my first year in real estate. I had a little 1,100 square foot condominium. In January, I had 42 people came to my condo to eat some wine and cheese, and we just kind of rubbed elbows for 90 minutes with each other. And I loved it because those 42 people only had one thing in common, and what was it? Me. All right? I really like that. All right? Now, understand my background. I've been a cop for almost 7 years. What am I going to have, an annual client party, past client party in my house? But you know what I liked even more? For the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, the phone rang with what? Referrals and thank yous, you bet. Business. It made me money. It made me tons of money. The difference, the very first thing I showed you when I started this afternoon is that the difference between superstars and good producers is what? Consistency. I never missed one for 14 years. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. In March, I did my movie night. I did the movie night. What's that? That's where I bought, maybe I buy 25 or 50 or got up to 100 tickets for a first-run movie. Comes out during the first couple of weeks, and if I buy 50 tickets, I invite 25 people from my list. I get 25 people to accept. They bring a guest. There's my 50 tickets gone. I meet them in front of the theater. They come in. I give them the tickets. Say, hey, let's have a good time. They sit where they want. They buy their own refreshments. They leave. I send them kind of a form letter. Thanks for coming to the movie night. And for the next few weeks, the phone rings with referrals. And I had more fun and spent less money. Real world, 50 tickets, let's say $5, $6 a ticket, whatever. You're going to get a break on the ticket if you buy 50 tickets, but let's say you pay $6 for a ticket. At $5 or 50 of them, $6, that's $300. Here's my point. You will get a higher net return, listings and sales, income from a $300 movie night than any ad you will ever run for $300. Yes or no? That's working the top part of the list and not the bottom part of the list. It's working smarter. I also think it's finding a different way to do the same job. In May, I did my discount for landscaping. They got 25% off at Peckham Gardens Nursery. I went and found a nursery that would give a 25% discount. I don't subsidize discounts, by the way. They did it because it generated additional revenues, and they liked it, my people liked it, and I liked it too. It got me business. In July, I did a sports night, some kind of an event where people, I buy a bunch of tickets for some kind of an athletic event, and everybody comes. I did one night I had we had a girl working in our office. Her name was Lisa Lopez, and she was married to a guy named Jesse Lopez, who was a number 8 ranked lightweight in the world. I've never been to a boxing match in my life, and I bought 600 tickets for Jesse Lopez's title bout. I went to the pizza place across the street from the El Dorado Casino where the fight was held, and I bought out the pizza joint for 2.5 hours, and we had 400, 500, 600 people over there, and we all went across the street. There's massive people going over there. We come into a big, huge room like this, and people in there, and there's like guys fighting and stuff, and my 600 people come in, and they're feeling pretty good after a couple hours at the pizza joint, and they're going, Jesse, 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 Jesse. He gets up in the ring, Jesse, Jesse. He got knocked out in the first round. So, not a highlight of my career, all right? In October, I do my culture night. What's that? The play, the musical. Buy the tickets. I don't have a lot of culture, all right? My wife, Robin, has all the culture in our family. I'm more of a cowboy, but I buy the tickets because people like those things, so I take them. One of the highlights of my entire career was October 12th, 1986, when I did a culture night. We had a rare event in Reno. 17 years I lived there. The only time Pavarotti came to Reno. $50 a ticket, Reno Convention Center, 5,000 seats, sold out in like 96 hours, about 500 tickets for the Pavarotti concert. Invited 250 people from my sphere, rented a giant ballroom, about, well, not quite even this big actually, and had, an orchestra playing and, the little shrimp and champagne, that kind of stuff. And the idea was come about an hour and a half before the concert began, let's hobnob a little bit, and then everybody goes watch the concert. What I did not anticipate, along with my 500 people who came to the convention center, everybody else followed my people down the escalator into my ballroom, all right? I knew I had a problem when I couldn't walk through the ballroom. And I was seeing these people that meant nothing to me, eating my shrimp, all right? And after about an hour and a half of this, you could not move through the ballroom. As best as we can determine, based on the caterer's bill, as best as we can determine, we had around 3,000 people, right, in the ballroom, eating my shrimp, okay? I jumped up on the stage about 15 minutes before the program began, and I said, I just want to thank everyone for coming. Many of you I know very well. Some of you have not had the pleasure of meeting yet. I'm glad I had something to do with the Pavarotti concert tonight. If you don't know me, I'm Rick DeLuca with Myers Realty, and if I can help any of you with your real estate needs in the future, keep me in mind. And that was it. That was it. 10 seconds, I jumped off the stage, ran to the door as quickly as I could, so as people were, masses of people were just going by. And some strangers, some very good friends of mine everywhere in between were saying, thanks, Rick, thanks, they said. Thanks a lot, they said. Thanks, they said. Thanks for bringing Pavarotti to Reno, they said. Not a problem, all right? Just that kind of guy, That was the single largest expenditure of my entire career, okay? Now, don't be intimidated by numbers. I don't say numbers purposely because it's meaningless. Remember, I said that you should be spending about what percent of your income to promote yourself? 10%. I never went over 10% of my income. And, that one night I spent around $36,000 for one event. But income generated to me from October 12th, 86 until February 15th of 87 was a little over $225,000 from a $36,000 expenditure. And I know that many of you are, that's not the area where you are, but let me just make this point. There's a whole lot of room between a $300 movie night and a $36,000 Pavarotti concert, and I think most of you fall somewhere in between. Is that all right if I say that? And I think that's working smarter instead of harder. I think that's having more fun in this business, and I think it's making more money, and not working just hard. That's not the answer. I think that the last few things I got for you. I think that you need to, as simple as this is, God, I wish I could get more people to do this. I think you need to give yourself less time for the same tasks. I think you need to tell yourself you only have 6 days of work instead of 7. I think you need to say you only got 5.5 instead of 6. The last 7 years of my career I'm most proud of because I got down to 5.5 days a week. And the irony, which some of you have learned in here, is that I made more money in 5.5 days than when I was working 7 days. You will give yourself, if you just give yourself less time, to get the same things done. If you find yourself going in too many directions and you really think you want to work harder instead of smarter, you think there's some merit to what I've said about just having systems. Maybe you need more system, a more systematic approach. And if you don't want to reinvent the wheel, you've got information in front of you on an order form that that you can avail yourself to, the systems that I've created. And I'm going to give you one other idea here before you walk out. I got 8 minutes left, and so I'm not going to give you a big commercial or anything. I'm going to tell you this. I'm on a plane. I'm back out of here, as I said, to Hawaii in about 2 hours. But I've got some people down at a booth. The booth number's on a thing there. But I got almost 2,000 people in this room. If you want to help us out, you can do this. You can simply, if you want to fill that order form out and take out your business card and just write your credit card number or your check or whatever, there'll be some people standing outside the doors with some beads on or something. They'll kind of stand out from you guys, all right? And you just hand it to them, and we'll ship it off. We'll get your products out to you next week. But have more systems. I don't care whether they're my systems, someone else's systems, you develop your own systems. It makes no difference to me at all. I just think you need more systems. Is that fair to say? The more systems you have, the better off you're going to be. My last 2 systems I'm going to share with you are these. And something that's corny sounding, but with a whole different look to it is subject as goals. I'm going to give you something that most people, a lot of people are uncomfortable even hearing this. I have never been, even though I've been a top producer, I've never been a big annual goal setter. I struggle a little bit with annual goals because I think it's very difficult to see 12 months in advance in this industry. I have always been a very big goal setter at 90 days at a time. I set quarterly goals. Yes, I do set some annual goals, but my focus is on every 90 days. I found that if I take care of the 90-day goals, the annual ones will take care of themselves. True or false? All right. And then on the other extreme, I will tell you the other goals I focus on are what I call life goals. And life goals are the things that I focus on before I leave this earth, the things I want to accomplish. And I think everybody's got their own life goals. Mine are broken into priorities. Mine are spiritual, their marriage, their family, their personal, and their professional. All right, and they've got money goals on there. I've got fun things on there. I got very personal things on there. And I'm not putting them on the screen in front of you to say, oh, these are the goals we should have. That's not my point. But I have found that even having a kind of a systematic checklist approach to life will give me more direction. And I think I'll get more accomplished in my life than if I didn't have those. Yes or no? It's as simple as that. And if you look at there, if you saw those closely, you'll see that I'm an avid golfer. There's lots of things about golf on my goals up there. And I will kind of end this whole session with one last thing, because it just kind of drives home the point. I wish I get people giving more thought to what they want to do before they wind up their whole time on this planet, and set some goals for that. One of the things on there that actually has a check mark on it, because my goals sit on my desk to this day. Some of them have check marks, some of them will never have check marks on them. I keep trying to do them every day. But one of them was to play a golf course in Palm Desert, California, down near Palm Springs, that I had seen years ago. I drove up with my wife, Robin, and I drove up to it, and they wouldn't let us in, all right? I had big 40-foot crashing waterfalls and everything, and I said, wow, what is this place? And the guard said, this is the Vintage Country Club. And I said, I want to play the Vintage. And he goes, yeah, I'm sure you do. And he sent me away, and so off I went, and I put it on my goal list that I want to play the Vintage golf course, because he gave me a brochure, and it's the most opulent golf course in the world. I mean, it's absurd, actually, is what it is. And they have two 18-hole courses. They have a 43,000 square foot clubhouse. They have 160 members, and they take the entire operating expense for the entire operation once a year, divide by 160, and send an invoice. Can you imagine getting that bill? Phew, geez. Honey, here it is. Oh, man. Well, I went on my goal list. I was playing golf in Orlando, Florida. About 2 years later, I was playing with a guy named Jack, and we were standing on the 17th tee waiting to hit the ball, and Jack said to me, where would you play if you could play anywhere in the world? And I said, Augusta would be number one, and number two would be a place called the Vintage. He goes, oh, really, the Vintage? And he goes, yeah, this is December of 85. And I said, yeah, the Vintage. And he says, well, when do you want to play? And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, I'm a member. And I said, really? This is in December. He said, I'm going to be down there for the month of January, so when would you like to come down and play? And I said, well, January 1st might be a little soon, but the 2nd will work for me. So I went down there. This time I drove. I savored the experience, obviously. I want to get there a little early. I think we had a 1 o'clock tee-off time. We got there around 9:30. And we got to hit some balls and warm up, So I get there. I drive in. It's like, I'm sure this is what heaven must be like. Driving in with all this water and flowers and all that stuff. And so we get there, and I'm waiting, and they finally show up. We go out and we play. We play, 3.5, almost 4 hours, play around the golf. We saw one other foursome the entire day on the other golf course. We come in. I don't drink much, a little occasional wine. That's about the extent of it. We come in, and Jack says, I want to drink. And I say, I want to drink too. So we sat in this cocktail lounge, about the size of this room, sat in this cocktail lounge, and the other foursome about an hour later comes in. We had another round, and the other foursome comes in, and in comes the little Secret Service guys with the earphones on. And they're looking around, and they go like this. And so open the door, and here comes in. At that time, the Philippines was going through all this stuff with Marcos and everything, and every night on the news was Secretary of State George Shultz. And so in walks George Shultz. And I said to Jack, says, look, George Shultz. He goes, yeah, he's a member here. And so he comes walking, George Shultz comes walking through this cocktail lounge right up to where our table was, and he sits down at the table right next to us. And as he's sitting down, he looks at us and he says, hey, how you guys doing? And golfers. Golfer. And I said, great, George, how you doing? It's protocol, not my strength, all right? And I had another round. And about an hour later, George Shultz pulls his table up next to ours. And there's like 8 of us now talking about drug trafficking in the Philippines, and this little real estate guy from Reno, Nevada, right? And we had another round. And the cocktail just comes over around. Now I had dinner with Robin Slater for 7 o'clock across the street. Around 8:30, the waitress comes over another round, and I said, how late do you open? She says, we close at 7, but as long as he's here, we're here. And then I said, well, as long as he's here, I'm here, all right? Around 9:15 or so, George gets up. When George gets up, of course, everybody gets up. We all go outside. We're going outside. There's half the California Highway Patrol waiting, around his limousine. And George Shultz goes to get in the limo, and I said, George! And I reached back like this, and you should see these Secret Service guys, where they're little Uzis, you know. I mean, and I said, George, and he says, what, Rick, what? And I reached in here, and I pulled out my business card, and I just handed my business card to him, and I said, you never know. And he just kind of shook his head, you know, and he got back in the limo. I turned around and walked away. Well, kind of walked away. As I'm walking away, I heard, Rick, come here. And I turn around, and here's George Schultz getting back out of the limo. And I said, what? And he says, come here. And he gets out of the limo, he takes out his wallet, and out of his wallet he takes a business card. It says, George Schultz, Secretary of State, United States of America. And he hands me the business card. And he said, you never know. The point is a real simple one. I could have wanted to do something real bad, like play that golf course, and it would have had the opportunity right in front of me, but I'm convinced if I hadn't written it down, thought about it, dreamed about it, talked about it, the opportunity would have been there, or would have went right on by me. Yes or no to that, folks? And so I don't care whether it's systems on listing presentations or pre-listing packages or marketing, or I don't care what it is. The more systems you have in place, I think the more efficient you become, the more productive you are, the happier you are, the easier this business becomes. Get more systems. Just get more systems. And, I hope that, I know many of you, some of you in the audience have used my systems to make you more productive, and that's what they're for. I don't care. All the people that go to your convention, when you go listen to all these people, find the one that you identify with the most, and then get their systems. Do not spend your precious time reinventing the wheels. Is it all right if I say that? For some of you, it's me. For many of you, it's not me. It's somebody else, at this convention. Whoever it is, or whoever they are, maybe it's 2 or 3 of them, then just don't reinvent the wheel. Get their systems and begin using them, and I hope that's what you got from me today. I told you that in 75 minutes I was going to try to give you 4 or 5 or 6 ideas. Have we accomplished that, by the way? All right, thanks for having me. Thank you very much. Very much. Very much. Very much. Very much. Very much.